Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. So glad to see y'all here. And today I'm going to be talking, it's going to be all about gardening, but I have a couple of different topics in related to gardening, so they'll flow right together. So hopefully I can break it up into two separate standalone videos that way. So the first part is gardening benefits, the benefits of gardening. Now, this can be just having a few pots in a south-facing window, or on a deck, or on a patio somewhere, or having a massive garden or somewhere in between. It doesn't matter. I don't want anyone to ever feel like you have to turn your whole backyard like we did into a garden, or that you have to have 20 acres or 40 acres or even 1 acre. Okay, so remember, for those of you who are new, we're doing most of this on our little neighborhood lot, with our house, with our big 1,200 square foot shop and firewood storage. And then, of course, we have to have the chicken coop and places for the chickens to run around. And everything that I'm doing gardening related is here. Well, I say everything, but there's a few things that we're kind of starting to work on the other piece of property. But a lot of it's just stuff that already grows wild there, like the wild blackberries, the little tiny ones, and the Himalayan blackberries that grow wild, and they're so tasty. Both those two are the two best. So it's just giving them more, enough area to just expand, and we don't have to worry about the elk eating all those berries. We have to be careful what we put out there, because elk will eat everything out there. So and it's harder to keep an eye on than right here. And everything's most of my garden areas, I'll say, are pretty well fenced in. We do have elk that come through the neighborhood, sometimes deer. But anyway, back to my point. My point being that this is just a shy 1/3 acre. It's not even a whole third of an acre. It's a little less than a 1/3 acre. And then, it's competing with a ranch style house that is 2,400 square feet and a 1,200 square foot top on top of that. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of excess space for garden. And then we've got a county easement in the back between us and the neighbors right behind us. So we can't do anything in there. That's got to stay completely open so the county can get to the power poles and whatnot. Out this way, I've got a little garden out here. It's my front yard garden. I've got a garden on the west side. I got a little narrow strip. So I do the best I can to make the most out of what we have here. So if we can do what we're doing now here, and I know we could still do more, we could do better, but we also have a lot of rain we have to work around. But the point is, everybody can do at least something, even if you live in an apartment and you have no land at all. There's always something you can do. And so the benefits of doing that. So let's just go over, starting with the obvious thing, that when you can grow your own food and your own medicine, I want to say it's free, okay? It can take money and time to get things started, to get things going, like I just had to buy a whole bunch more fencing to protect some of my garden areas from my chickens and whatnot. There is cost involved, but once you have your infrastructure in place and you've got your pots or whatever it is, then, you can continue to keep using these things every year, and then you're getting free food. You're getting free medicine. You got to buy your seeds to get started, or your starts. But then if you have perennials, they'll keep coming back. And then anything that's an annual, you can learn to start collecting the seed from that and then grow it again. So you don't have to keep buying seeds every year. So the only reason you would need to buy seeds again would be if you're wanting to try a different variety of some kind of squash or whatever. If you're wanting to try a different variety of something, then you may want to buy something, or you just want to add more to your garden. But once you have things established, it's just learning how to keep collecting the seed and keeping your perennials alive. Now, with that said, this isn't so much a benefit, but I want to throw this out there as a little tip. When you get your herbs or anything, your vegetables, to a point, and maybe you live in an area like we do, and you've got you really only need one zucchini plant, but you go ahead and put in 3 and you've got zucchini coming out your ears and you're begging people to take the zucchini. Put up as much of that as you can. It wasn't that long ago, I had this massive patch of oregano both out here and out here. It almost all died on me, and I had to dig up what was still alive, these tiny little starts, and move them to different places. So I probably won't be harvesting oregano this year, but guess what? I have plenty because I always put up plenty. I always put up plenty of my sage. And you might be going, well, I don't need, 3-quart jars of oregano to get me through a year. It still is a good idea to put up at least double what you have before, because you never know if one of your perennials just might not come back. Another one that is struggling to come back that's done good for me for many years is my catmint, believe it or not. The main one that was out in the main garden isn't coming back at all this year. I noticed last year it was looking a little sad. This year, it died completely. So that was unexpected. As healthy as that thing was for so many years. But thankfully, I had made starts from that years ago and had a couple going out here. Now, those were also struggling. But when I realized what was happening, what's happened with the ones on the west garden is they've got crowded out by the dandelions and a couple other things I was intentionally allowing to grow. So it's a matter of taking the catmint plants and moving them somewhere else, or digging up some of the excess dandelion. Because right over there in the west herb garden is the best place for my dandelion. It gets the biggest leaves, the biggest flowers over there. It's great. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. It's really important that you always don't assume just because your perennials are doing good and they keep, maybe 5, maybe 10 years in a row, they just keep giving you a lot. You never know when one year all of a sudden something's going to happen and that perennial just might not come back. It might just decide, you know what, I'm done. And if you live in a place like I do, a lot of those, lemon balm does good coming up from seed that it drops, but like the oregano, the catmint and stuff just doesn't seem to do well coming up from the seed that drops. So it has to be started indoors and given time to grow before I can put it in the ground. So there's a lot in the mint family, surprisingly, that are that way here. Lavender is the same way and certain others. So just remember that. You should always put up extra of everything because you don't know from year to year what is going to make it to the next year. And then if the next year you still got plenty, then just put up enough for another year. So you're always at least a year ahead on anything that you're going to be putting up, at least that much. So anyway, so the first point obviously was the free food, free medicine, free in quotes, obviously. Another benefit obviously is also obvious is knowing what went into making that food. You know what you added to your soil if you added anything. If you added any chemical fertilizers or not, which hopefully anyone following me knows better than to do that. You know what kind of mulch layers you're adding. You know what kind of life is going on in there. You know how this stuff was raised. You know that there were no pesticides. You know that your stuff is not genetically modified. You know what you're growing. And you know that you're getting healthier foods as a result than what you can buy at the store. Even those things that are labeled non-GMO and organic, we're still going to buy non-GMO and organic for the things we have to buy. But you're still never certain, especially if it's USDA certified, you're still not certain what that percentage of organic it really, really is. Then there's and I kind of covered this a little bit in my last live, but there's that beneficial bacteria that's in the soil. And there's lots of beneficial bacteria in your soil, especially if your soil's healthy. Okay, if you're treating your soil right, it's going to be healthy. And when there's certain bacteria when you get that on your skin and it gets into your, into your bloodstream, it's going to increase the endorphins. So that means it's going to help ease depression and just make you happier all the way around. It's very, very healthy for your state of mind, as well as like Deb had mentioned, it's a free workout. You don't have to pay to go to a gym. I mean, I've always thought it was silly to pay to go to a gym when you can work out at home. Though I know for some people, paying for a gym membership kind of makes them feel more motivated to go. But you know what? If you just start doing things like gardening and doing other things by hand, do things a little more old fashioned, you can get a pretty good workout without having to go to a gym and pay for the cost. And getting out in the sun and the fresh air is so healthy. It's healthy for your body. It's healthy for your skin. It's healthy for your entire state of mind. I know that, it was just like a few weeks back or maybe a month ago where I was just really just struggling, and I had to come on one of my live. Well, I didn't have to, but I came onto one of the lives and I was kind of bemoaning all the dark and all the wet and all the mud and all the rain, and how I just there's this point of the year where it does get very depressing because you can't get out there and work in the garden, and you start to feel like it's never going to be nice enough. Nothing's ever going to grow. It's going to rain forever and ever and ever, and you feel like you're in that Ray Bradbury story where they crash landed on this planet that rained all the time. Why do I always forget the name of that story? Some of you who, anyone who's ever read any Ray Bradbury short stories would know what I'm talking about. But I remember when I read that short story, I'm like, yeah, that's like living in Forks. And then one of the last points in regards to that is that just the whole idea of gardening. Again, it doesn't matter if it's even just growing a few herbs in a windowsill. There's a feeling of accomplishment. This kind of goes right along with that whole getting outside, and getting the bacteria from the soil and increasing your endorphins. Even if it's all has to be done inside, because that's the only option you have. There's a sense of joy when you see something coming up out of the soil, especially if it's something that you can use for medicine or for seasoning your food, and it's something you grew yourself. The confidence it builds, the sense of accomplishment you get, and just the joy. It's so good for the soul. So gardening is good for the mind, the body, the soul. It's good for your mind because I tell you what, it makes you have to think. Yeah, you have to problem solve. We all live in different types of climates, and we all have different types of soil conditions. We all have different types of pests that we have to deal with. And even if we have a similar pest, the climate can have a say on how difficult it is to deal with that pest. So I bring up the slugs a lot because of that. So I actually lived in Moses Lake as a little girl for a couple of years, hot and dry, very much like Wenatchee. And places like that will get slugs, but because it's hot and dry, the amount of slugs and the amount of time they're out and about eating everything is far shorter than it is in a place that gets an average of 120 inches of rain per year. And, we don't live far from a rainforest. We live in the wettest part of Washington State, which is on the west side. Everything on the west of the Cascades is wet. Everything that is on the east side of the Cascades is very dry. And that's most of Washington State. Even though Washington State is associated with rain, it only applies to 1/3 of the state. And then about 90% of that rain only applies to our small little area. Not even Seattle is included in that. So slugs around here do not respond to the same things, the beer and dishes, the coffee grounds, the eggshells, the copper wire, because the copper wire quickly corrodes and is no good, and the slugs will just go right over it. It doesn't bother them one bit. So The only thing that works is salt, but you don't want to be putting a lot of salt on your plants or around your plants, because you can kill your plants if you get too much salt. So we have different ways that we have to try to figure out how to deal with the slugs. We have, because of the amount of rain we get, there's a lot of things that we either can't grow at all, or if we wouldn't really want to grow them, like the rosemary, we realize that we have to grow it in a sheltered area that's not going to get so much of that rain. It's not even just about having well-drained soil, because even well-drained soil, when you get as much rain as we do, is not good enough. It's still too much water. And so I had to plant my rosemary in very sheltered areas that get very minimal water, and whatever moisture they need, they'll pull up from the ground, but they don't get rained on. I do water them a little bit when it's dry out, but that's about it. Everybody can do a little bit of something, and I feel like I can't say that enough. Anyway, hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great week ahead. Thanks for coming in. Take care, and God bless.